On today's episode, you'll hear from a broker that practices short-term memory loss. This is the Be a Marketer podcast, Real Estate Edition.
Be a Marketer.
My name is Dave Charest, Director of Small Business Success at Constant Contact, and I help small business owners like you make sense of online marketing. And on this podcast, we'll explore what it really takes to market your business, even if marketing's not your thing. No jargon, no hype, just real stories to inspire you and practical advice you can act on. So remember, friend, you can be a marketer. And at Constant Contact, we're here to help. Well, hello, friend, and thanks for joining us for another episode of the Be a Marketer podcast. This is the fourth in our series of episodes dedicated to the real estate industry. And that means, yes, two things are about to happen. One, we're going to say hello to Kelsey Carter. Hello, Kelsey.
Hello, Dave.
And we're also going to say hello to Stephanie Alfonso. Hi, Steph.
Hello. Hey, guys. I'm back.
So great to see both of you this morning. We've got a real estate edition. Kelsey, what can you tell us about our guest today?
I thought you'd never ask. So today's guest is Ian S. Hoover, the founder and broker of record for Deacon Hoover Real Estate Advisors. Now, Steph, is there anything that you kind of want to get into with Ian? I know that you actually know him prior.
Yeah. So I've known Ian for many years, an awesome independent broker over in the Pittsburgh area. So Ian is just funny. He's great. He's got a lot to say. He's got a podcast of his own. And I think we're going to learn a lot from him today.
I'm excited to get to the conversation. But before we do, I think for the Luddites like Kelsey and myself here in the real estate industry, I think you need to do a little clearing up here for us, Steph. So I've got a couple of questions for you. Help me understand. So, real estate, I know I work with an agent and I go buy a house or sell a house, whatever the case may be. But what does it mean to have a brokerage? Like, what is a brokerage?
Yeah. So a brokerage really is a real estate company, right? Where agents work under a licensed broker. The broker oversees transactions, ensures legal compliance, provides support for the agents, right? The agents handle the clients, but the brokerage provides the structure, the tools, and the credibility to make it all work.
Excellent. So as an agent, why do I need a brokerage?
Yeah. So the way the kind of hierarchy, I guess you would say, in real estate works is in order for an agent to practice, they need to hang their license underneath a brokerage or underneath a broker, right? So an agent is definitely focused on building relationships with buyers and sellers, whereas a broker is also doing that, but their primary focus is building relationships and growing agents.
Got it. So if we think about just marketing then in general for a broker owner like Ian, how is that different when we start thinking about what we're doing there?
So when you think about agents actually focusing on buyers and sellers and brokers really focusing on agents, when it comes to marketing, right, recruiting and retention is also a big focus for brokerages as well. So brokers are focusing on building the brand of the office, building the brand of the brokerage, whereas agents are more focused on, yes, the brand of the brokerage as well, but more so branding themselves as individuals. So when we think about it, brokers have to focus on so many things in order to recruit and retain good talent. So they're focusing on what kind of tools are they going to provide, what kind of training, what kind of coaching. So there's just a lot of things that go into it. And then, of course, you've got, when I say that Ian is an independent broker, he's not part of a big box franchise like a Remax or a Coldwell Banker. He is Deacon and Hoover. He's got a business partner. They started their own brokerage. They've got 60 agents. And that's it. There's only one Deacon and Hoover Real Estate Advisors.
So
for now.
Yeah, for now, right? Exactly, yeah. Right? So one of the things I've found interesting about our conversation is really, how locked in Ian is on the type of agent that he's looking to attract to the brokerage. Namely, he wants to create high producers, not necessarily attract those people as they're already at the kind of top of their game. And this was a really interesting conversation. I thought that was actually a pretty cool dissection of like how he's thinking about how he's building his brokerage as well.
It's also different, right? As you'll find, it's also different from a lot of what we hear in the type of agent that he's trying to attract.
Yeah. In addition to some of that we'll learn obviously through this conversation, Ian talked about the awkward moment that really led to him opening his own brokerage, which was a really fun conversation. He talks about what his mom taught him about positivity to overcome obstacles thrown his way and what he learned about determination really early in life. And so, like many entrepreneurs, Ian got started with his own thing after being let go from his previous role.
Very interesting.
Let's go to Ian.
I was fired from my career in retail, and I had already had my real estate license and was already focusing on it anyways. I was on my partner now's team at the time, so I was just a team member for him, and quickly became, obviously the top producer on the team and did really well there. Started getting my broker's license, and then him and I always had a plan to open our own brokerage. And then once I got my broker's license, like, let's do this. He kind of was like, you know what? I'm getting a little old and maybe we'll just do a joint team together. And that didn't line up with what I wanted to do. So I made the tough decision to accept a position with a different company and start building and developing their commercial department. And then fast forward like 6 months later, I was I was still on the invite list to Alex's daughter's wedding, my partner's daughter's wedding, and I really did not want to go. It was out of town. I'm like, it's going to be awkward. I don't work with them anymore. So unfortunately for me, I was talked into going still because we had a weekend without the kids, and I was just, yeah, we're going. And I was like, okay. And I did what I did in a lot of awkward situations where I maybe had a few too many drinks that night. And a couple days later, I get a call from Alex, and he's like, hey, did you mean what you said at the wedding? And I was like, what the hell did I say at the wedding? He's like, oh, that we still might open the brokerage together someday. And I was like, yeah, maybe someday. I was actually really happy with what I was doing. And he's like, what better day than now, right? So we met out of respect. I was like, I wouldn't be where I'm at without him. I sat down, I went over my list of demands. He agreed to everything. And I was like, oh, I guess we're opening a real estate brokerage. In 2017, we opened it up, and then it's been a wild ride.
That's cool. I never knew that story. That's awesome. I did not know that that's how you guys really kind of sealed the deal.
It's always alcohol, Steph. It's always alcohol with me.
Man, that truth serum, right?
That's how you make dreams come true.
Getting deals done. That's pretty hysterical. Well, hey, sometimes that truth serum gets you to open up a little bit. And I certainly am glad you did. That's for sure. So I want to find out a little bit more about you and just, of course, like I said, I just finished reading your book. So it makes me think of a lot of questions. And I was like, man, I feel like I know Ian so much more. But, you were raised by a single mom.
Yep.
Who is disabled. And I really think that a lot of times, especially now with doing the podcast and everything and just getting to hear where people came from, oftentimes it is out of challenging situations. A lot of times the entrepreneurial spirit really comes from grit and things that should hold us back. But business owners tend to have that strength. So I'd love to hear just what that was like. Like, how did that instill in you as a business owner? And how did that drive you to get to where you are now?
Well, I mean, my mom has had a huge influence on my life. She did try really hard to work and everything as much as she really could, but she definitely worked when it came to, just keeping us fed and I mean, two just really hungry teenage boys. We ate her out of the house. I mean, I always say that she knows how to cook potatoes 150 different ways because we were poor and that was the only thing that was cheap. But she's really a great mother, and now she's a fantastic grandmother. And she taught me a lot. One of the things she always taught me is anytime anything bad happened, think of the positive out of it, right? There's always some positive or always some bright side to take out of it. Even if it's like, oh my God, that was horrible, but I learned from it, right? Like if you stay positive, it's going to get you through the bad stuff so much better. And that's really what she taught me at an early age. The other big thing is you want to go into a field where you're always going to have opportunities, right? So she's like, go into medical or sales. Those are the two fields you should go in. I don't know why she chose medical. That would not be for me at all. I'm not big with blood and yeah, no, just not for me. So I decided to go into sales, and I got my first job at Best Buy when I was 16 years old. But I wasn't getting called back from Best Buy, and I applied and didn't get a call back. And I wanted it so bad, I just started filling out the application every single day. And it was one of those applications where you have to answer the 20 minutes long of, I forget what they even are, like disc assessment questions, like what would you do in this situation, in that situation. So each time I applied was 20, 30 minutes. And I did it about 17 times in a week. And then I got a call on that following Monday bringing me in for an interview. And then the lady who called me was like, hey, Could you do me a favor though? Like, can you stop applying now that we're giving you an interview? and that was a really good moment in my life because I kind of realized that if I just have this determination and this passion and energy, I might get told no the first 16 times, but that 17th time, I'm going to get a yes or at least a maybe, right? At least a conversation. And that's really how my life's gone. I just, every time I try something new, I make sure that I try as hard as I can and work as hard as I can. And I got so many stories of just random times where I probably should have maybe even been fired, and it just worked out to where it got me even further along down the road, right? Because my determination and passion for what I do is really what drives me. And when you talk about the book, that's really one of my takeaways from the book for people is like, if you get anything from my book, I hope it's that you can legit use your sales ability. And we all have a sales ability, whether you know it or not, to get further down the road, right? If you want that promotion, if you want that job, be the squeaky wheel, make sure you're there and you're showing whoever you got to show how important you are. And eventually it'll work out for you. Even if it's not that opportunity, it might open a door for another one.
Yeah, I definitely got that from the book. And, just having a relentless pursuit for yourself, right? And it's funny because people say to me all the time, because I have a background in sales. Oh, are you in sales this? Or, are you still in sales? And, I really look at it as like, we're all in sales. No matter what, if you're in business, you're in sales. And whether you're selling yourself, whether you're selling a product, whether you are selling internally, I mean, you're always in sales. And I feel like your book definitely gave us an insight as to you truly having a sell of yourself and really believing in yourself. And that's awesome that you give so much of that credit to your mom, obviously her believing in you and driving that. And the other common theme that I see with other successful people in business is oftentimes we don't fit into the mold of other companies, right? Like I'll hear it all the time, like, well, I got fired from this company and I really didn't like doing this. And it's almost kind of like there's something in you that's like, I need to do this for myself. So fast forward, you've grinded, you've worked at other companies, you're learning that you've got a niche for sales. You go to your buddy's wedding and in a drunken moment decide to go into business together. Now you're sober. You're like, oh gosh, I'm doing this. Tell us your thought process. Did you have doubts? Were you like, oh my goodness, like what were your reservations? Kind of walk us through going into that.
Actually, I don't know if you met Matthew that works for our real estate brokerage, but a good friend of mine, Matthew, he came down from Erie to work for us and learn real estate. But he actually thinks that when I was a child, I was scratched by a cat that had a disease and ended up dying like 3 days later. And I got cat scratch fever. Yes, it's a real thing. I have like swollen lymph nodes in my neck over it and everything. But the disease that is cat scratch fever, if you research it, and there's like a Forbes article, I can send it to you. I guess there's a certain percentage of like entrepreneurs and CEOs that have it. And then I guess it's really known in the animal world for like smaller animals that are once they get it, they're no longer afraid of tigers and lions and they get eaten and stuff like that. So I really think it's that I'm not afraid to fail and I'm not afraid to make mistakes. And I really had no worries. I knew what I was doing. I knew I was going to be successful. And don't get me wrong, have we had moments where it's like, holy crap, is this really going to happen? We had a lawsuit that we ended up not having the right amount of insurance or whatever for a lady. She slipped and fell at an open house. And I mean, she was asking for like $1.2 million over like our insurance coverage and stuff. I mean, hey, there was multiple times where I've been like, oh crap, maybe I didn't know what I was doing and so I definitely got into something I didn't know what I was getting into. However, I never for a moment doubted that myself, especially with Alex there too. I mean, he's got over 30 years in the business. I was like, we're going to crush this and we're going to be fine. Maybe it's stupidity, but it worked out. Sometimes it's
Ignorance is bliss.
Yeah,
Sometimes.
exactly. Sometimes it's good just to not know what you're getting into. Because otherwise, if I had the DeLorean and it was parked out front, and I went 88 miles an hour, I don't know if I'd do it over again because number one, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of energy you put into this. And real estate, unlike other companies, the goal is to either A, someday have maybe my kids take it over, B, someday sell it or something. But it's not as valuable as like a traditional company because, your agents aren't under any contract, right? So when you sell, they could just jump ship and go to another company. So I think if I knew everything I know now going back into it, I probably wouldn't do it again. Or if I did, maybe I'd take the easy way out and open up a franchise or something, which probably will make Steph fall out of her chair because she knows how much I'm a fan of the indie space. But going into it blind was probably a good thing because I wouldn't be here if I knew what I was getting into.
Well, Ian, through this process, though, what have you found that you love most about running a business, particularly in the real estate space?
I think the coolest thing is just I get to work with just the most fun group of people, even though I don't get to see them every day because agents nowadays, they work a lot from home and everything. I get calls from them, I get texts from them. We mess with each other all the time. I mean, it's just a really fun group of people. And I need that because honestly, like the real estate space, I think once you're in it for over a decade, it gets a little old. It's like the same stuff over and over again. But being around just the coolest group of people, it's just so much fun. I mean, our Pirates games, our happy hours that we do, our holiday parties, we just have a blast together. And I feel like I just get to work with my friends all day long. And it's not really work when you're having fun, right? So that's the big thing for me. There's so many challenges and, every day I'm putting out fires, but it's not as grueling as you would think it is because I'm surrounded by people I love and care about.
Yeah, I love that you're bringing that up because that's one of the topics that I'm passionate about when I speak to brokers is obviously recruitment and retention. Those are your two big R's. So kind of two-part question to find that good talent, to find people that are going to fit in that culture of Deacon and Hoover, which I've experienced and you guys do. You guys have done an incredible job of fostering culture. I felt like I was part of the family walking into your office within 5 minutes. Hats off to you guys and what you've established there. How do you do that? What are you doing to, we can kind of go into a little deeper about how you truly market the business in your community. But how do you market your business to other agents? How are you attracting the right clients? What does that look like?
Yeah, it's kind of a multi-phase thing. Obviously, we have teams now. So now it's getting a little easier to attract more agents because our team leaders are attracting agents. So it's like we're just kind of signing up people on teams. Now, we do obviously have, other solo agents that are coming on board. Right now, we've actually dialed back the recruiting. And it's not really because we don't want to grow, but again, we want to grow with the right people. And the people that we reached out to recruit kind of cold calling wise, we've only had really one of them ever work out to where we were really happy that they're here and everything. Now we have a couple new ones that just came on last year and are working out pretty well. But the big thing for us is we want to, when we're looking at existing agents, we want to find those agents that produce. So they're doing maybe like which our market, by the way, we're a $200,000 market, right? That's our average sales price. We're not like a New York City where it's $1 million a sale. We want somebody that's going to be doing that like $1 to $2 million in production range. So we know they know how to sell houses, but they just don't know how to run a business and how to grow a business. And then we can teach them those other things that go along with it. So that's the ideal person for us. It's kind of a lower producing agent that maybe doesn't know how to grow their business, but wants to grow their business. They're hungry and eager. Anything over $5 million producer, I mean, they want a sign-on check. They want ownership in the company. They want all this. They're like an actor who has like a list of things that are requirements for them to to join your company, right? And that's just not what we're going to go get. Now if one of them wanted to join us and they were realistic and they just wanted the support and training, then yeah, absolutely come on board. But so we really found out that we don't want the agents that don't do any business because there's a reason why they're not doing any business at all, right? But we don't want the really heavy hitters either. We want to play in our range and we want to build those $1 to $2 million producers into $10 million producers and then continue to redo that over and over again. So that's kind of our niche. Now, as we expand in different markets, we're probably going to try and get some hitters, at least one hitter in each market so that we have something to build off of. And maybe that might even end up being like maybe their market or their office. We haven't really figured that out yet as we expand, but because there's one thing, we did have an early expansion like in 2018 or 2019, we bought another small brokerage in the east of Pittsburgh and the old owners were supposed to stay on and help us build up that office. And then they quickly dipped out. We probably should have used a non-compete agreement. We didn't. But what I found out during that learning process, again, it's a learning process, not a mistake, right? And what I found out there is that there's only one me, right? And I can't be in two places at one time. So it's going to be kind of hard for me to build and develop another office without somebody who is like me and who's financially invested into that location. So I think that's going to be a big part of our growth as we continue to expand.
Ian, one of the things I like about what you're saying here, right, is like really knowing who it is that you're going after, right? Like who you're looking for. And I think that's one of the biggest realizations I think that anybody can have marketing any type of business, right? Because if you know who you're going after, it makes it easier actually to do those things and easier to make decisions, right? So I'm wondering, could you walk us through like what it is that you are doing from a marketing perspective to reach that niche that you're trying to get to?
When it comes to the agent specifically, when we are in full recruiting mode, we actually have in our software that we got from Stephanie back in the day, we actually have a CRM portion of that CRM that's just to recruit agents. And so I typically sort by what areas they're selling the houses in, and then I focus in on how much they're selling. So those are kind of the two things. And then I literally just pick up the phone and call them. That's the number one best way to build a relationship. Hey, my name's Ian. I'm with Deacon Hoover. If they don't know who I am, I'll start it like that. I'd love to buy you a cup of coffee and talk business, and just kind of leave it at that. And, it's probably a 10% yes rate, but that's the best way. Get in front of them, ask them why that they're only a $1 million producer, and then kind of show them that like, hey, if you come over here, we're going to show you how to build your $1 million business into a 5, 10, $15 million business. And oh, hey, we've done it 10 times now, 15 times now over and over again, right? We know how to do this. We know how to do the business. And that's really the focus there. Now, when it comes to branding and marketing, that's probably the toughest part of being a brokerage. Because when you start up an independent real estate brokerage, like nobody knows who the hell you are, So like when I was making cold calls back in the day with our agents and, we'd be like, hey, it's Ian with Deacon Hoover. They'd be like, who? What? Like, what do you do? Like, who are you? Now it's to the point where at least if you're, I would say within a 20-mile radius of our office, you've probably at least heard of our company, which is, it's getting a lot easier in that way. But I did a lot of affordable branding is what I like to call it, where like we bought, I think Steph has some. I'm wearing one right now. We have hoodies with our logo
I
on
do.
it in the
I
back.
sure do.
A big logo, and we give those to our agents to wear. And obviously, we're big on social media. I would say out of all the brokerages in Pittsburgh, we have to post more than any other brokerage in Pittsburgh, at least consistently, and part of that is our software that we got. It's automated and it does a lot of our social media posting for us, but we also sprinkle in our creativity and our fun and our personalities into that as well. And then of course, urge our agents to do it too, but that's a whole nother realm of issues. But I think nowadays, if you're not online, if you're not marketing online, you're not marketing at all. Billboards, I don't know how I see people do billboards, but I'm just like, how do you even rectify that and say that's a good investment? You're spending $3,000 a month for a billboard. I mean, unless if you have a specific number that's devoted to like when calls come in on that number, it came from that billboard. I don't know how you can even come up with like an ROI and whether that makes sense or not. And I'm just not a big fan of spending money for no reason. So that's kind of our attack, is we attack online because it's so cheap. Like back in the day when I first signed up in real estate, they said, here's 100 postcards, mail them out to everybody you know. Like, and that cost me like, I don't know, $100 or something like that when I mailed them out. And nowadays you can reach 10,000 people for 100. You can reach 100,000 people for $100, right? If you do it right and you're strategic about how you're investing into your business. So that's my real big takeaway with marketing is get online, build a presence, build a sphere. And I know some other agents in town that I watch and they're doing some really cool things too. Steph and I talked about it on my podcast where, just one guy in town, he doesn't even show his face on camera, but he just videotapes neighborhoods and coffee shops and, and that just draws people's interest. And then he gets referrals from people moving to town. So there's all kinds of ways to do this business. You just got to find what works best for you.
Yeah. And be consistent with it.
Well, I mean, yeah, consistency is always like the huge thing, no matter what you're doing, right? Like, I'm curious then, how do you, I guess, kind of like a two-part question, right? Like, one, what are you looking for? Like, how are you measuring success in the efforts that you're doing from a marketing perspective? And then from there, I know you're big on kind of like automation and adopting like things that are happening with AI and those types of things. So like, how does that kind of change what you're doing just from a process standpoint as well? So two part. How are you measuring success and then how are you adopting these new tools?
Yeah. I think that we really gauge our success on just the fact that we're constantly growing and our numbers are always increasing. And if you look at the market, that's not always the case. 2023 was probably the worst year in real estate that I've been in since like when I first got my license in 2021. And we went down about 6% year over year from 22 to 23. And most of the other brokerages out there went 20, 30% down, right? So we look at that as a huge win. And then moving forward in 24, we rebounded very quickly and we actually increased sales from 22. So we were pretty ecstatic about that and we hit our goals. And so that's the big thing for me. As long as we keep hitting our goals and keep progressing in the right direction, I think we're doing the right thing. AI, on the other hand, it's so amazing. If you're not using AI, you are missing the boat. But at the same time, I get it. It's probably going to ruin our whole entire world at some point. So, I'm looking at it as like, I'm going to use it while it's here and available, because if I'm not, I'm at a competitive disadvantage, right? And that's kind of how I look at it. But AI is so great. Like, you can actually have every part of your business automated to some extent. And the best, honestly, my favorite thing about AI, if you're like me and you need to send some nasty emails from time to time just to kind of get people in line or whatever, you type it all up and you look at it, you're like, oh man, this is brutal. You can copy and paste that in and you say, clean this up, but make it still very direct and, give it direction. And then it creates this wonderful, beautiful, polished email that, when you tell somebody that they're messing up, it's done in a way that they respect you for it instead of get pissed off because you just called them bad names and everything else I had in my initial email that I was about
That's
to send.
hysterical.
But
Ian, in my AI classes, I'm going to start using that. Use this as a PR tool to help
absolutely, yeah.
you
I am
to
not
be, yeah.
I'm not highly educated. I'm here because I know how to talk and I'm good at what I do there. But like, using the power of AI to make myself a more polished businessman is awesome. And I love it. I mean, I tell my agents all the time, there's a million ways to use this. Okay, you want to add a new revenue stream to your business? Go into Chat GPT and say, hey, give me 10 new ways to get customers in real estate, right? And it's going to give you 10 new ways to get customers in real estate. Maybe one of those is a way that you could easily implement into your business. I mean, it can be an idea machine. It can give you ideas on how to organize and train and develop yourself. And it's almost like taking all the resources of the internet and putting it into one engine. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. I love that you're utilizing AI. I also love the fact that you're saying, like, I'm also helping my agents to start utilizing AI when it comes to your marketing. How are you staying competitive with the big dogs out there? Right. I have a heartbeat for the indie brokers. You know that. We're 90+% of all real estate is considered small business. But when you think about an independent broker with 60 agents like yourself, how are you staying competitive with, the big box brands when it comes to your marketing, your tools, your training, all that?
That's one of my favorite questions, Steph. And how I can answer that question, especially to like an agent, that's really who wants to know, is like when I'm meeting with a new agent is thinking about joining our company, is like, why should I join you? Because, you would just think that I'm automatically going to get the best tools if I join a Caldwell Banker or a Remax or whatever, insert any big brand name. And that's not always the case. What's happening is similar to back in my corporate world that I got fired from back in the day. You have somebody at the top who's making decisions on what's the best software for you to use, and you have to use that software, or you have to go pay your own money to get the software that fits your business the best. When as an indie broker, we get to choose who our software providers are. And honestly, I think that, and it's probably going to be in every 2 to 3 years, we might need to make a change type of situation just to stay on top of everything. But that's allowed us to really create a huge setup of tools for our agents and for our incoming agents. I can literally sit down and tell an agent, you're going to get $1,000 plus a month in tools for joining our brokerage. And your business online is going to be 95% automated for you, which you would have to pay a lot of money for if you went anywhere else. And then the crazy part is that I also know what systems most of my competition are using. And it's a lot of times systems that are older and outdated. And therefore, like anybody I meet that's thinking about joining Remax or us, I mean, I get to tell them like, hey, look, you're going to have to go and pay for your own software or use a software you're probably going to hate. And that's really the big thing about being indie is we can make that decision.
Wanted to pivot a little bit because our time is running out, and I wanted to address a few things in your book that I took notes on that mattered to me, and a few quotes that I wanted to go over. And one of them that stood out is, and it's because I got to experience it firsthand with you, is the art of negotiation. And I feel, Ian, I have watched you in action. You are a great negotiator. And especially now in the real estate industry, everything that happened with the NAR lawsuit and buyer's agent compensation changing, we are in a negotiator's paradise. So as I'm reading this, I was like, man, I really hope Ian is like having a masterclass for his agents because he is a very great negotiator and got to read all about how you developed that muscle. I will say I relate to you. I as well. I love buying cars. Love it. I'm such a weirdo. Like when I have to
So
buy a car, it's so exciting for me. And I'm reading you and I'm like, whoa,
most people
Dave, you
hate
love buying
car
I'm
cars?
like,
shopping.
oh, I hate it. That's
Yeah.
the worst process ever.
Totally. And to me, it's like a game. I'm like, ooh,
Yeah.
so crazy. I know. My husband like rolls his eyes like, oh gosh, if we need a new car, oh, it's a great time for stuff. But, again, we live in a negotiator's playground. What are you doing to impart these skills? I mean, negotiating is wild right now, and how we're negotiating every aspect of our business as well as our worth. Just negotiating like, hey, what am I worth to you is a thing that's holding a lot of agents back. That's why we see so many agents leaving the industry, is because they're really having to make that one of their strongest muscles. So share your thoughts on it.
They're leaving the business because they're lazy and they don't want to work hard for their money, right? That's why they're leaving. They got in during 2020 when it was so easy. You just video show a house and sell it, right? And everybody's making crazy money and all that. And now that the industry's getting hard again, which it does, it goes through its ebb and flows like any industry does. The ones that are lazy and don't want to work hard are going to be exiting the business or putting their license in referral or whatever the situation is. And the other ones are going to put their head down and grind. Or even better, they're going to find anytime that you're in sales, you have a comp plan, right? With commission, your main job is to analyze that comp plan and figure out how I can take advantage of that comp plan, right? Just like our taxes, we got to take advantage of the tax code too, right? And so, like, when this comes out and they're like, hey, you now have to negotiate your commissions, that's like a light bulb going off in your head. Is like, now I get to go make more money, right? Like this lawsuit that's actually supposed to hurt our industry actually will end up helping our industry. And like, you got to think that most of the newer agents in this business, they're buyer's agents. They're not going out and getting a bunch of listings, right? Especially because nobody likes to cold call anymore. So they're not getting expired listings like they used to back when I got in the business. But what they're really going to be able to do is, as the market cools off, which it is going to cool off, we're heading towards what's going to eventually be a slow period in the next probably 3 to 5 years. If they sharpen their skills on negotiation, then when a house sits on the market for a couple months, they're going to be able to go to that seller and be like, hey, look, I got an offer for you. Guess what? I want 5% commission, right? Like, you want to sell this house? I want 5% commission. To sell this house, I'm going to do a lot of work and I want paid for it, right? So that's going to open up just a huge opportunity for buyer's agents moving forward to make money. Not to mention, they can leverage how much their client's willing to pay versus how much the seller's willing to pay. So there's a whole bunch of different ways to take advantage of that. And really, it's just about communicating properly to your clients, right? Like, if you just explain, like, this is what I'm going to get paid. And you know what? It's even better. Be transparent with your client. Like, if people think that, like, oh, the agent made $12,000 for selling my house, that's crazy, right? Like, that's a lot of money. Well, you know what? They're splitting with their broker. So maybe they made 7 grand after splitting with their broker. And then they're paying taxes on that. So there's another 40% gone to taxes, right? So now we're dealing with $3,500. So they did $3,500 to work nonstop around the clock for how many pointless hours? People don't realize the behind the scenes stuff too. So all this is doing is creating an industry to where we have to sell ourselves now, and we have to tell people this is why we make the money we make, because we do this, and this behind the scenes that you're never even going to see. And that's really the big thing. And honestly, anytime you talk to a for sale by owner who has struggled to sell their house, a lot of times they respect that agent a lot more than the traditional client that's going to hire an agent. Why? Because they went through it and realized this ain't easy. This isn't fun. This isn't easy. And I need a professional. And you can also use NAR statistics. I mean, the National Association of Realtors is great with their stats. And I don't remember the exact stats off the top of my head because I'm not actively out there selling like crazy anymore. But like back when I was selling like crazy, I was able to tell for sale by owner, hey, you're putting it on the market and using a licensed real estate agent, a realtor, is going to get you like 13% more for your house than not using a realtor is. So even if you pay, let's just call it 6% commission, which we're not supposed to use rounded numbers anymore. But even if you use 5%, whatever the commission is, I'm still going to make you double what you're paying me. And really, you're not even paying me all of that money because I'm going to share my commission. That's how it used to work anyway. So, and that's really as a selling professional, you need to have all those numbers memorized in your head so you can just snap off and tell them exactly what the deal is. Hey, I'm going to make you on average 15% more. If you know your own personal numbers, even better, right? Hey, the average is 13%, but I actually made my clients 18% more. And you can use things like through the negotiation period too, like through your inspection period, through your appraisal period, how much money you save people, and start keeping track of those numbers and use that to your advantage.
Absolutely. It is so important now that agents really focus on, again, selling themselves, right? We talk about good salespeople need to know the product, right? Agents need to understand they need to know themselves, what they're worth, what they do. With you talking about just for FISBOs, for sell by owners, Miami Association just put out a stat not too long ago. And don't quote me on this, I don't have it in front of me, but I believe it was the average seller using an agent was getting between, I think it was $70,000 or $90,000 more for the transaction.
Think about it.
And so it just kind of lends to, I wouldn't go into a courtroom without being represented by an attorney, right? Why would we ever want to go into the largest transaction of our lives without having somebody that has a fiduciary responsibility to represent me in that? And I'm with you. And I love that. I know you're coaching your agents on that of these are all the things you need to be showing to show your worth, to show your value, so that it's not, we need to change that stereotype that agents make too much money for doing nothing. They picture a 56-year-old woman with rhinestone shoes and a name tag getting in a car and taking you around on a Saturday and showing you a beautiful kitchen with the pie in the oven. And they're not showing all the nitty gritty of what this industry is made of. And so I think it is absolutely crucial that agents become stellar, top-notch negotiators and are communicating their value prop to the community.
You don't see when that same agent that looks so great at the open house or whatever, you don't see when they call their broker later that night crying because of 3 things that happened that day. It's not an easy business. It's not fun. It can be sexy at times, but you got to grind. The ones it's just like just about any sales industry, 80-20 rule, right? 80% of the money is made by the top 20%. If you're not in that top 20%, you got to grind.
I'm just curious, as we start to wind down here, like what would be the big thing that you've learned that you'd want to impart to others as you've been doing your own thing here? And like, what's the most important thing for people to kind of get as they embark on doing this on their own as well?
Well, it's tough because everybody does our business a little differently. I think that the most important part is kind of going with a game plan, going with a game plan, have your goals set up, be focused and ready to go. And you have to give that game plan and those goals time to work, right? So, I mean, if you're like, hey, I'm going to make 25 cold calls a day, and then you stop making cold calls 3 days later, well, that's not going to work, right? Or you stop making cold calls 30 days later because you're just not seeing the results that you want. I mean, honestly, I didn't become an expert cold caller until probably 6 to 8 months down the road of making 100 calls a day, right? I put in the book too, a lot of little tricks that you can use. For instance, Dave, if I were to call you and you were an expired listing and I say, how do you pronounce your last name, Dave? Charest. Okay. I didn't want to mess it up. But if I call you, and that's the first thing is a lot of last names are harder to pronounce. But if I call you and say, hey, Mr. Charest, what are you thinking right off the bat? If I say, hi, Mr. Charest.
You got my name right.
But you're like, you're going to try to sell me something.
Yeah.
But I'm like, you're somebody that doesn't really know me. Yeah. Like,
I don't know you. This is a sales call or spam or whatever else, right? That's what people are thinking when they hear that. But if I call you and say, hey, Dave, you're thinking that we know each other. Maybe I got a new number or something, right? So it takes you off edge a little bit, and then you can transition into that call a lot easier. The other thing is I'm big on like, you have to have a power statement is what I call it, right? Is you have to have something that's going to blow their mind when you say it. And it sounds hard, but like I would just say like, I sell houses that other agents have had trouble selling, right? That's what I would say to expired listings. My name's Ian. I sell houses that other agents have had trouble selling. And that's why I'm calling you, because your house was on the market for over a year and didn't sell. I have availability, Friday at 2 or Saturday at 10 a.m. When would you like to meet for my no cost consultation? And they just like, well, you know what? Let me talk to my wife. You know what? My schedule fills up really quick. You could still talk to your wife and call me back to change times, but let's get that. You you got to be persistent with it. And the only way to get to be a true expert at whatever your niche is, mine was cold calling back in the day, but whatever your niche is to constantly do it and fine tune your skills. And people just give up too easily.
I know we need to wrap up, but there's one more thing I wanted to get to. Again, it's because I think I've seen it. I read about it and I'm like, yep, that is Ian. That is the culture he has. And that's relationship building. You have done a great job just internally, again, with having great culture, building a relationship with the agents that you mentor and that you train up. And, you talk a lot in the book about Gary Keller's 33 touch system. That's, less than one touch a day, right? With
Way less. Yeah.
keeping in consistent communication with your sphere. And so one thing that I wanted to just have you end on is, what is your tips or tricks or advice to just maintaining good relationships, keeping relationships with past customers, not being a statistic and only having 13% of your past business actually call you again? I would love to hear how you do that. How do you maintain these great relationships?
Well, you missed your opportunity to plug right there, because you should have said, like, how do you stay in constant contact with your consumer, right?
Listen, this isn't my first podcast. I've gotten a lot of my cheesy stuff out of the way. I've done all the things. I'm trying to play it a little cool.
Well, it's a really great question. And honestly, one of my favorite things about sales is the building relationships with people. And I always say that I'll remember your face, but not your name for some weird reason. If I haven't seen you in a while, I'm going to remember the face, and then it might take me a little while, or I might even remember your house before I remember your name, which that happens too from time to time. But the big thing for me is that you want to build the network and you want to be more than just their real estate professional or their sales professional, whatever industry you're in. And you want to be their friend. I mean, honestly, a lot of times after I'm done with a sale, if I haven't already, I'm adding them on Facebook. I'm plugging their birthday into my calendar so I can call them on their birthday. I keep notes to what their favorite beverages are, what their favorite, things to do are, what sports teams they like, right? And I actually got a lot of this from an old lender of mine back in the day. His name's Todd, and he may or may not listen to this. He's no longer in the business. I'm trying to get him back into the business, actually. But I called it the Todd Novak effect. I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan in Pittsburgh. Okay. It's not a great thing. Okay. It really is not a great thing. But so Todd used to order calendars for all of his agents, right? Pittsburgh calendars or whatever that they could stick on their fridge and know the schedule, right? And that was something he did for all the agents that gave him business throughout the years, right? And for me, he would order Dallas Cowboy calendars, right? But because the minimum quantity was 250. So every year I would get a package of 250 Dallas Cowboy calendars, right? Because he didn't want to leave me out. But honestly, like something like that, if you can find a little thing like that, that's something you'll never forget, right? And that's what we're doing right now is we want to create a situation where that person's never going to forget about you. And they're always going to think about that one thing you did that just blew them away, right? Whether it's you got there early and shoveled the sidewalk for them and salted so that they don't slip and fall, or anything that you can do to kind of set yourself apart and show them that I'm here to be your friend as well as your agent and everything else involved. And a lot of my clients have become friends of mine, and a lot of my agents are friends of mine. And I want to have as many friends in the world as possible. And that's really the attitude I take to it. And even my competition usually ends up being my friend after everything. We're goofing off and laughing and talking like Obama and Trump the other day. It's you just gotta have fun.
That's right. That's right. And when it all comes down to it, right? We might be on different teams, but we're playing the same game. So
2 quick things though, before I let you go. Number one, you said pivot earlier. Okay. And I watched the interview with Ross from Friends. I don't know what his actual name is. I always just call him Ross from Friends. And they asked him what people yell out to him the most. And he said, I'll just be walking down the street and just hear pivot, pivot everywhere I go. Right. That's all he ever hears. And then the other thing is you missed the most important quote, which is the name of the book is Short-Term Memory Loss. And that's because when I was in retail back in the days, I worked in wireless retail, and I used to have people come in because we had to sell and service, right? So I used to have people come in and their phones be broken or they drop calls and they're pissed off and they're mad, right? And I had to turn those mad people into happy people by the time they left the store. That was my goal anyways. But every once in a while, you just had that guy that clearly, guy or gal that would clearly, it was just their bad day and they just took it out on you. and they left the store angry, doesn't matter. And you had to have short-term memory loss. You had to forget about that because that was going to affect the rest of your day. If you let that person who came in and blew up on you affect the rest of your day, your sales are not going to be what you think they're going to be, right? So if you're making cold calls and you have somebody tell you to F off or anything negative that could possibly come out of that, you have to forget about it and pick the phone call up and pretend like it never happened. So that's why the book's called Short-Term Memory Loss. It does not make any sense at all until you read it. But that's my big thing. Have short-term memory loss. If you have a negative thing happen to you, forget about it, move on, and go make something positive happen.
All right, friend, let's recap some items from that discussion. Steph, great conversation as always. What do you got for us today? What are some things we should be thinking about?
All right. So takeaway number 1, focus on culture in your brokerage. Really to retain great talent, fostering an atmosphere where agents actually feel supported and success is cultivated is how you're going to retain great talent.
Yeah, Steph, you mentioned, obviously, you've experienced that culture that Ian has built with his brokerage firsthand. And, what I love is that as an owner, right, you really get to decide not only like the clients that you're trying to attract, but also the talent that you're trying to bring into your business. And to your point, when you create that supportive atmosphere, it really goes a long way to your overall success as a business, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's also great to have a little bit of fun. I definitely felt that when I was at their office.
What's your second item for us here today?
All right. So number 2, listen to the voice of your agents, brokers. Listen. When it comes to adopting new tech or anything really that's going to impact the day-to-day, seek their input. This is going to increase adoption for whatever you're looking at.
I think we talk about this a lot, right? We hear this a lot from people I know. We as, marketing, I'm using air quotes here, experts, right? We tell people, insert whoever the audience is here, right? But by listening to them and how you start to really find out how to improve your offerings and how your marketing can improve as well to get people to take those actions that you want them to take and do those things. So I just think, yeah, great one there because an important reminder. Number 3, what do you got for us?
So number 3 for me is really to be relentless in your pursuit of success. So whatever success looks like for you, don't let setbacks hold you back, right? Sometimes, as Ian says, short-term memory loss is needed to shake off those hard moments and just keep going. That is the heart of an entrepreneur. So even if there's 2 steps back, take 3 steps forward, keep going, never give up.
Yes, keep going. There is no failure, only things to learn from. So that leads me to an action item for today. How about we say something along the lines of make an adjustment, right? So what's something you've learned? Start thinking about what's going on in your life and your business. What's something you've learned over the last month? Maybe it's something about your operations, or maybe it's something relating to your marketing. Put some time in your calendar, right? Review what you need to review, and then find that small adjustment. Maybe it's a big adjustment, whatever it is, but find that adjustment that you need to make and then make it happen. Because it's through those adjustments that you and your business actually start to grow, right? Steph, once again, thank you for joining us for our real estate edition of Be a Marketer today.
My pleasure always.
We'll see you next time.
See y'all.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Be a Marketer podcast. Please take a moment to leave us a review. Just go to ratethispodcast.com/BAM. Your honest feedback will help other small business marketers like yourself find the show. That's ratethispodcast.com/BAM. Well, friend, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day and continued success to you and your business.